Hi everyone, JJ here with The Art of Value. Welcome. Well, today we're going to look at which super investors have been buying Alibaba and JD.com this past quarter. The 13F filings are out from these super investors. They're fund managers with over $100 million invested in their funds, so they have to reveal what they've been buying and selling in the quarter, or at least at the end of the quarter, so we can see that. You can see here this long list of these well-known investors from Warren Buffett and Lee Lewis, Bill Ackman, really well-known names who have these big funds, some in the billions. Some of them have been buying Chinese stocks. So let's get into who's been buying Alibaba and JD. This is from Dataroma, a website that tracks these things. And here we can see Alibaba Group Holdings, how many investors. The ownership count is 12. These aren't all investors that have bought in the last quarter, but we can see here how many own it. Right up the top is Charlie Munger, who has recently died, of course, but the Daily Journal Corp still exists and they haven't sold it off in this past quarter. People were wondering that if they were going to sell it off. Didn't do so well for Charlie Munger when he was alive, but maybe he left instructions not to sell it. But we have here Michael Burry, from The Big Short, who did add 50% in this last quarter, and David Tepper, well known from Appaloosa Management, also added some. We'll have a look more in depth in that. There we have some other well-known names. Guy Spear, who is a friend of Monish Pabrai, he still owns Alibaba, has done nothing with it in the quarter. Prem Watsa, often known as the Canadian Warren Buffett. And we see a buy from Howard Marks down there. I've done videos about Howard Marks before. He's a legendary value investor, and he has gone in to buy Alibaba. Has he bought JD.com? We'll have a look at that. Now here we see the specific activity in the quarter there. We see Michael Burry's added 50%, 25,000 shares. David Tepper added 20.83%, 750,000 shares. Howard Marks, the first buy for him. Those other investors just added to it in this quarter. We can see in the quarter before their buys and sells as well. We can also see which investors have reduced in that quarter, including Chase Coleman. They're selling out 100% with nearly 1.5 million shares selling out in the quarter. So some selling and some buying as usual. Now we can see in the quarter before, Q3 2023, where Michael Burry did buy in that quarter for the first time. I think he's owned it before, but he did buy this allotment of shares in that last quarter, Q3 2023, 50,000 shares. So he's added 25,000 to that. And Chase Coleman bought in that last quarter nearly 1.5 million shares and then sold out. And we see David Tepper down there from Appaloosa Management in that previous quarter reduced shares from 19.55%. But in this quarter has added 20.83% again. Now we move to JD.com. We can see the investors who hold this. Michael Burry there added 60% in the quarter. Chase Coleman reduced nearly 11%. Howard Marks added 27%. And Christopher Davis reduced 5.86%. So fewer investors who own the stock here, but let's have a closer look at the activity. So in this past quarter, we see Michael Burry added 60% to his JD position, 75,000 shares. Howard Marks from Oak Tree Capital Management added 27.3%, nearly 500,000 shares. It's a big firm with a lot of funds under management. And Christopher Davis reduced. There were a few other investors that reduced there. Chase Coleman and David Tepper sold 100% of JD. So he lost conviction in that in this quarter and sold out of that. He does have Alibaba, but he sold out of JD. And in that quarter before, in Q3 2023, we said Howard Marks added 68.71. When I say Howard Marks, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's him. He has said in interviews and podcasts, I've heard him say that when he heard that China was uninvestable, that's when he pricks up his ears. That's when he gets interested. And he was obviously serious about that at the time. This was a few months ago, and he has bought both of these stocks in China at this time. And Michael Burry there, we can see that he has bought in that last quarter of Q3 of 125,000 shares, and he added 75,000 to that of JD. And others that are sold out in Q3, we can see there, including David Tepper reduced by 10% there, and he sold out in Q4 100%. Now, if you're getting value out of this episode so far, I'd really appreciate it if you remember to hit that like button to help the algorithm to spread it to more people, because that's what we want. Thanks. Now, I think it's interesting to go more in depth to these portfolios. This is Michael Burry for the quarter. He's actually bought a lot of stocks in that quarter, unusually a lot because he hasn't been a huge buyer lately. He can trade in and out quite quickly, so keeping in mind that this was at the end of 2023, so he may even be out of them already. We just don't know. But what's interesting is that his biggest position is Alibaba. It says 6.15% of the portfolio, and JD is number 2, 6.11. So those two Chinese stocks obviously has quite a lot of conviction in there. He's added to it, and it's his biggest allocations. We can see other ones down there that he's bought during the quarter: HCA Healthcare, Oracle, Citigroup, CVS Health Corp, and he's reduced Nexstar, Media Corp, and he's bought Alphabet, Google as well, 5.17. He's bought that, not just added to it in that past quarter, so that's notable as well. He sold Star Bulk Carriers Corp. He bought Amazon as well, MGM Resorts, Booking Holdings. He reduced by 16%. Advance Auto Parts, Warner Brothers, Vital Energy, Block. He bought Block this quarter, which is a surprise, as well as other stocks there. We see Toast, The Real, which he's had and reduced by 12.69%. Curate Retail right down the bottom there. I've seen quite a few value investors go in and out of that, mostly losing money over the past few years, but he's got a little bit of conviction in that. He bought it. It's only 0.56% of the portfolio. So now we move to David Tepper's portfolio, Appaloosa Management. We can see there, if we look for Alibaba and JD in there, so at the top is actually Meta Platforms, still the biggest position. They've reduced just a little bit, 5%. They would have done pretty well out of that. Microsoft, they've added 3.98% even during this AI exuberance. Amazon, they've also added 5.33%. Nvidia reduced 22.93%. That's not surprising to see given what's happened to the price. They would have done well out of that, but moving out of that, perhaps a bit of a safety there as the market gets very exuberant for AI stocks. Uber also reduced by 17%. Alibaba, here we are. The sixth biggest position is 20.83%. They added to, and it's almost 6% of the portfolio. Next comes Alphabet right under that, and they reduced that by just over 16%. That's 5.73% of the portfolio. And Advanced Micro Devices below that. It's always interesting to see what David Tepper is buying and selling, or the allocation to the portfolio. It drops below 5% pretty quickly. Intel Corp, they reduced by 26%. Qualcomm is in there. That's 23% reduction. Oracle, they bought Oracle. And Pinduoduo, another Chinese stock there, reduced by 44.64% during that quarter. So adding to Alibaba, but reducing Pinduoduo substantially in that quarter. They have other stocks they've added to, like Caesars. They've reduced Micron Technology quite a lot, 13%. Baidu, another Chinese stock. It's interesting to look for other Chinese stocks in here. They've reduced that by 6% during the quarter. And Taiwan Semiconductor reduced by 50%. So Warren Buffett famously bought into that quite big, multi-billions, and then sold out. And in the Berkshire meeting said that it was a great company, one of the world's best companies, but in a bad location as he saw it, with this tension between the US and China. And is China one day going to walk into Taiwan and try and take it over? He didn't like that. He sort of specifically said the location wasn't great for him. Let's move to Howard Marks and see more of the stocks that they've been buying. I say them because it's quite a big firm. You can see the amount of portfolio value there. So it's not just him, but as I said, he was talking about Chinese stocks, how he was becoming interested because it was uninvestable. And then for a value investor, a long-term value investor, he gets interested when people start to say it's uninvestable. Be greedy when others are fearful, as Warren Buffett said. So we can see JD down here. It's only 1.16% of the whole portfolio. That's an add of 27.3%. If we just look at the percentage, we might think that we might get a different impression, but it's not a huge amount. If we can see up there, the biggest positions for them, one's 28.64%. Torm PLC and Chesapeake Energy are their biggest positions. Garrett Motion, which is a reasonably small company, I've seen that on value screens as being cheap for quite a few years, but these are pretty small positions that we're talking about here. Going down here for Alibaba is 0.17% that they bought into there. but still represents quite a lot of money because it's a big fund. And him and hers health, it comes just below that. Remember that they were involved in bringing the SPAC to market back then, so they're not sold out of that. I've seen people talking about that stock. I haven't looked at it. Here we can see the buys and the sells in a group. So we can see JD.com there, even though they added 27%, it's kind of up there in their biggest buys for the quarter. Greater conviction than Alibaba, which is a buy. See down there, a buy of 120.2 thousand shares and 0.17% change in the portfolio. So it's an adding to JD.com and a buying for Alibaba. Now, what do you think of these buys and sells from these super investors during this past quarter? Do you think it's going to be a good idea to buy Alibaba or JD during this quarter? Prices haven't really moved that much. It will be interesting to see if they buy any more. Are you an investor in these companies? What do you think? Let me know in the comments what you think of these buys and sells and of the companies. Now, if you don't know already, I've started the Art of Value Patreon just for the price of a cup of coffee each month. I'm talking about the stocks that I own, the stocks I'm researching, more in depth of some of the things I'm talking about here. I'll put a link in the description if you want to go and check that out, and see you over there. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to put a video here of what YouTube thinks that you in particular should watch next based on your history and so forth. So go and watch that now if you want to. And thanks to everybody for watching or listening, and I'll see you in the next one.